Welcome to the Outdoor Biz Podcast, your home for inspiring conversations with outdoor insiders. Each week, author, speaker, adventurer, and outdoor industry veteran Rick Saez talks in depth with iconic brand founders, sales and marketing pros, product designers, and industry rising stars. Listen in when Rick's guests offer actionable advice to land your ideal industry gig and grow your outdoor career. Catch us again when the conversation shifts to the hottest outdoor products, destinations, and the latest industry insights. And now, here's Rick.
Hey, happy holidays and Merry Christmas. I'm going to take some time off from podcasting over the next 2 weeks, but not to worry. I'll be replaying two of our more popular episodes of 2022, featuring episode 326 with author Doug Peacock and episode 336 with filmmaker Rob Holmes. I'll be back in 2023, kicking off the year with new episodes, including a follow-up with Christina Henderson from the running event, my conversations with Tim Wenger from the Matador Network, and professional kiteboarder Sensi Graves. And huge thanks so much for your support as year 6 begins for the Outdoor Biz Podcast. I can't do this without you. Thanks for listening. Welcome to episode 326 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. This conversation is very special to me as I get to speak with one of my environmental heroes, Doug Peacock. I was fortunate to meet Doug at an Earth First Rendezvous in Idaho in 1988. I'm just finishing his newest book, Was It Worth It, from Patagonia Books. Doug and I talk about his many adventures, love for wildness, and his tireless quest to protect wilderness. Welcome to the show, Doug.
Well, thank you.
It's great to be talking to you. We were just talking about how we met many years ago. Neither one of us probably remembers the exact meeting, but it was a fun weekend for me. I'm sure it was for you, too, at that Earth First Rendezvous.
Yeah, the Lost Range.
The Lost
Idaho.
Range, that's right. Yep. Beautiful spot. Yeah, amazing. Great fishing. Yeah, it was a good weekend. Yeah. So you grew up camping, hunting, and fishing. Is that where your passion for the environment comes from? Was that instilled in you by your folks, your dad?
I grew up in Michigan, and my dad was a Boy Scout organizer. So, he would go up to the woods and, lead and organize Boy Scout troops operating in the woods, and I would be too little to be a Boy Scout, so I got cut loose to just run wild in the woods, catch turtles, and hunt squirrels, whatever, everything. And that's how I grew up. I had the family had a little cabin on the Upper Pine River, and I grew up, trout fishing roily rivers.
Oh wow, very fun. That's a good spot. Yeah, and I'd love to hear how you met Ed Abbey.
Well, that was a bit later.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't until I came back in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
I'd spent a lot of time, in the wild. I mean, I had to, if you wanted to avoid the draft in Vietnam, you had to either have a child or you had to be full time in college, and I didn't like college that much, and so I didn't avoid anything, and so I got back in 1968 from Vietnam, and I spent I wasn't much good around people like many other vets at that time, and the one place I've always been comfortable is the wilderness, just because of the way I grew up. And, I'd already spent a life in woods and mountains and desert and rivers by then, so I've been around. And so I just went into the wilderness when I came back in Vietnam, kind of waited for the snows to melt, moved north through the Rocky Mountains, ended up in the Wind River Range on the east side of the Winds back in the early summer when it was really snowy. I waited for the snows to melt and went in there. And I had a malaria attack, and which is not a big deal. I had a lot of malaria attacks. I had several after I came back from Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew what I was in for. What you're in for is a long, slow, very high fever where you go out of your mind. So I knew I had to get the hell out of the winds.
Mm-hmm.
Winds, there's no trails in there. There's no people in there. And of course, that's why I liked it. And, but it was also really bad weather and rugged as hell,
I can imagine.
The most wonderful glaciers in the lower 48 are in the west.
Mm.
So I went to Yellowstone, and had my little malaria attack and came, and I lost track of time, kind of went out of my head, and I imagined seeing grizzly bears, and they turned out to be real bears in short. And so I spent the rest of the summer just kind of watching the bears, and then winter came back on, and I had to get the hell out. And I'm kind of bipolar in my, love of the Rocky Mountains. I have to be around the grizz, but when they hibernate, I hightail it south because I also love the low deserts, especially Arizona, but other places too. And that's where I was when I met Ed Abbey. It was winter of 1968, about December, I think. And I had a good friend who was a writer, a wonderful writer, named Bill Eastlake. And, he kind of got as settled in as I ever get. I think I was... when I met Ed, I was a substitute mailman, and he finally ended up living in my place. But anyway, my friend Bill ran into Tucson wasn't a very big place back then in terms of writers and wilderness people then, and I knew Alan Harrington, who introduced me to Bill Eastlake. Bill Eastlake is a wonderful, wonderful writer. And he called me up and he said, Doug, why don't you come on over to my place? He lived in, remote back then, remote Tucson. And, I said, sure. So I got on my motorcycle and it was a cold winter night and, went out to where Bill lived, and there weren't any houses out then. I mean, it's a cow plop now, but it wasn't in 1968, and it took me a half hour to find his place and bang on his door, and there's Bill with some, I don't know, poets, writer types,
Yeah.
And I sat down on a couch next to a guy with a black beard, and I during those days I smoked Bugler cigarettes, so I had a little baggie full of Bugler tobacco and rolled a little joint like cigarette and tried to light it. But I was so cold, I was palsied, and my hands were shaking. I couldn't light the mat. And this guy reached over with a lighter and gave me a light. That was Ed Abbey.
Really? Oh wow, that's interesting. I thought you guys would met out in the wilderness of the desert somewhere, but that's pretty cool. And you became lifelong friends. You guys did a lot of things together.
Oh yeah, he invited me down to Oregon Pipe where he was the seasonal ranger, and a couple weeks later, I showed up with a 6-pack of beer in one hand and a bottle of whiskey in the other, because those were considered good manners back then.
Right, yeah.
Knocked on his door.
Very fun. And you, back to the Grizzlies, living with the Grizzlies, you credit the Grizzly with restoring your soul. I'm just partway through your recent book, For What It's Worth. And I'm curious, how much of that restoration of your soul is from the Grizzly and how much you think is from wilderness? Because I'm like you, I like to go out and be by myself and, be around nobody. And a lot of it's wilderness. I don't get to be around grizzlies much.
Yeah, for me, there's no difference. The grizzlies back then were synonymous with wilderness.
Gotcha.
They remains in my mind. And, the point, I think, you're going to do anything for yourself at all and, sort of seek some kind of mending in wilderness or the wild, you got to get out of yourself. And, I don't know, the easiest exit I know from culture is wilderness. But it sure helps if that wilderness has something in it that you have to pay attention to the whole time, When you're in grizzly country, you don't think about your whatever girlfriend or portfolio or
Right.
You know, there's something out there that can kill and eat you anytime it wants to, although it doesn't very much. But, you know, that helped. That helped. And, you know, and so I had to go to places with grizzly bears. I got, you know, it was like an addiction,
Mm-hmm,
you know.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and you got to roam around some beautiful spots at a beautiful time when there was nobody else there. Now it's kind of rough. You got to go further and further.
Yeah,
afield.
you really got to work on it. I couldn't agree more. And I write about it in this book a little bit. But,
yeah. I just started your book recently, and I'm about to the chapter where you just wrapped up your story about when you're in Mexico with Scarp and all the wandering around you guys did. And stuff.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
It's called "Was It Worth It"?
Was it worth it? Right, the book.
What's an inscription I found out on the desert that Ed Abbey and I so loved, you know, just scratched on a rock by a miner named John Moore. I don't know who the hell John Moore was, but, you know, that's what he did. He'd chisel his name on rocks in the most remote, ruggedest part of that, you know, totally wild desert with no humans whatsoever in it. And posed that question, was it worth it? And man, it was crazy out there. You know, it's 130 degrees in the summertime and all the water holes run dry. And Lord knows.
Can't imagine. Different environment. That's right. Different environment. Yeah. So as we're barreling through the 21st century here and a lot of respects environmentally going backwards, you think there's time to repair the environmental damage we've done to the planet?
I don't know the answer to that question, but that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. You know,
Sort
it's
that
the
out.
only thing we have to, because it's that cloud is it's rolling in and knocking out our door. Up here, we're going to have horrible fires this year. Terrible, uncontrollable fires. Your style, California, unstoppable fire.
Yep.
And that's a new norm. And I just wrote Tom McGuane a little note, you know, saying that I hope I'd run across his spore because we're going to be moving around a lot, you know, trying to stay out of the way of those fires.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. I keep a go bag packed because I live on the outskirts of Bishop, and if a fire starts west of me between the mountains and me, and the wind's blowing to the east, forget it. There's not going to be enough time. I got to have that bag in my car and go. And
you bet your ass.
Yeah, it's going to be scary. Yeah. So this is the podcast is for the outdoor industry, and regarding the outdoor industry, these are all the people. Have you been to an outdoor retailer show? I think you have with Patagonia.
No, but my friends do all the bloody time. You know, Rich Wade's a really good friend, and they were in Salt Lake City where Dennis Sizemore and I co-founded Round River Conservation Studies, so they were based in Salt Lake City. I was around. I just don't like crowds. I have been into one.
I think you were in one to sign some books or something at the Patagonia booth.
Yeah, no, they were somewhere downtown Salt Lake. Right?
Yeah, right downtown. Okay. Yeah. So, in regards to the industry, you know, we all love the outdoors. We all sell gear to the outdoors. What makes you smile in terms of land access and public land protections and sustainability efforts that the industry is doing, or are you aware of any of that?
Marginally, because I work full time in conservation, kind of going the other way.
Right.
You know, when I was board chair of Round River for 25 years, we, working with our indigenous partners, either created or preserved, you know, well over 35 million acres of wilderness. You know, and that's a lot of Yellowstone parks. And so, you know, that's been my primary goal. And when I lobby for grizzly habitat, you know, the gold standard would be mostly official wilderness. So that puts me really trying to. I don't see easy access as a boon to anything, because, you know, that, like, if you wanted to do what I did in Yellowstone, you might find an approximation of it, but you'd have to work really hard.
Yeah.
And the more, you know, the easier we make it for people to, you know, glide into the, you know, the wilderness. And of course, Trump wanted to put Wi-Fi and fast food in Yellowstone campgrounds.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
Yeah.
so I don't know, man.
Yeah.
But I had a different experience. That experience was so vital and important to me, and what I think is vital to the world. That's what I'll fight for. The rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and you're right. It's harder and harder to do that in the U.S. You have to go further north to the wilds of Alaska and even further than that. Yeah. It's getting pretty tough. Yeah. What frustrates you the most when you see, places like Yellowstone and, Yosemite is just like Disneyland now. I don't even consider that wilderness anymore, but Yellowstone and some of the places in Montana where there's so many people. I mean, it's just.
It's, on the other hand, collectively, it's our fault.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're the ones that have done that or permitted it to happen some way. And I take a certain amount of responsibility for it. So, I'm trying to chip back and fight for small wildernesses within existing ones all the time. And up here, I don't quite see, the polar extremes, but I mean, mountain biking has run into, some of my friends who are don't want any kind of mechanization in the backcountry, and I know that argument is going on, and I never used trails, so that's
yeah, right,
and up until the last couple of years, I was taking some, and perhaps last, but wonderful bushwhacks with no trails, hiking across glacier and stuff.
That's
like
awesome.
that.
Yeah. Well, I'll bet most people, I shouldn't say most, a lot of people couldn't do that because their, navigating skills just aren't what they need to be to do something like that.
No,
you gotta know what you're doing.
Yeah, I will go to my grave without having touched a GPS. Even though all the conservation work Round River did to save those 35 million acres depended upon GPSs. But as for me, I will stand on the hood of my pickup truck in New York City and look for the North Star.
Nice. That's great. Yeah. I think I've held a GPS, but I've never used one. I still try to do the map and compass. And when I'm in New York City, I use my phone because, God, it's just those places. That's another thing. They're just so big. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. I've got to go in a month, I've got to go to New York City. They gave me, the American Academy of the Arts and Letters gave me one of their 8 literature awards.
Oh, congratulations!
And since Abby turned his down, I was with him back in 1987.
He turned it down.
He said, Douglas, prizes are for children. However, it comes with $10,000. And I need the beer money.
There you go. You got to go. Just go collect the check. So you can have your trophy back. I just want the check.
That's right.
That's pretty funny. So, how do you think grizzlies and wolves are doing? It seems like grizzlies. We hear more and more that they're sort of hanging in there, but I think they're just getting their habitat's just getting destroyed.
The amount of institutionalized hatred could not have been maximized more in Northern Rockies. And, I'm in Montana, but it really doesn't matter if you're Wyoming, Idaho, or Montana. They made it, in Montana, you can go out and kill 20 wolves.
Wow.
Just me, I can shoot 10 and trap or poison 10 more. Then you can shoot them from helicopters with infrared at night or snowmobile or anything you want.
Jeez.
And it is a culture that it's born out of ignorance, but it's hardened into hatred. We tend to what we don't know are those big, large carnivores of all our animal species.
Mm-hmm.
We're strangers to those animals, and we fear what we don't know.
True.
And we hate what we fear.
Yeah.
And so you've got these grizzlies have the slight advantage of still being on the endangered species list. or, but grizzly poaching is rampant. And that's one of the things I do is I hired a law firm to get all the Freedom of Information Act reports. And I'm writing that up with an idea that, the Federal Wildlife Service, who are in charge of endangered species animals, are going to have to protect grizzlies from the states. The states of Wyoming, Montana, and Wyoming just want to kill a shit out of them. And so every minor conflict, they just killed a grizzly last couple of days, who reportedly got into cows. I don't know if the cows were already dead or not, but man, that's going to happen.
Sure.
What is happening with our wild ecosystem, especially our grizzly bear ecosystem, is climate change is pushing animals all over the goddamn place. And the quality of the habitat, the so-called carrying capacity, is declining. And big forest fires, forests tend to come back as grasslands in Yellowstone, at least some of them. And so bears, especially grizzly bears, are looking to get out, far beyond the boundaries of the National Park Service and just look for new foods.
Right.
And this is natural and normal, but we don't do anything. We call those kind of bears explorer bears because they show up right on the edge of I-90. I-90 is an absolute barrier to grizzly bear migration. One of my projects is I hired Lance Craighead to help me out here. We're trying to put an underpass, an existing underpass under I-90 that, black bears and mountain lions and anecdotally grizzly bears use, and we studied it for a couple of years with trail cams.
Oh, cool.
It's right there and it's cheap. And now, we're just going to I'm not much good dealing with bureaucracy, but we got to tap into some of that Department of Transportation money and, make those crossings, at least 2 or 3 of them, safe for animals like grizzly bears. They radio collared a grizzly, I think it was last fall, who was just bumping up against I-90 for a couple weeks, and he'd back off. And he had a radio collar on so they could monitor him 24/7. And it's like going into a great big electrical fence.
Interesting. He wouldn't touch it, huh? Interesting.
No, it's too much of a barrier.
Yeah.
All the fences, all the concrete, and the considerable traffic that's on that road.
Yeah, I think the other thing we have to do is figure out a way to keep people away from some of those places, because in some of these, we love these places to death, and then next thing you know, somebody wants to build a big lodge in the middle of the national park, and we just keep putting our stuff where their stuff is, and they have nowhere to go.
Yeah,
it's I don't know. There's probably no answer. We're just going to slowly take over the planet.
Well, we're going to, as we take over the planet, we're also thinning the planet out of the kind of vital habitats that we ourselves evolved with. And
right.
Simply put, that which evolves doesn't persist without the conditions of its genesis. I've been writing that sentence for about 50 years now. But, that's really what I believe is, human beings didn't evolve, the intellectual part of our evolution anyway. It didn't happen on farms or in cities. It happened back in habitats whose remnants today we would call wilderness. And that's why I fight so hard for such places.
Yeah.
Is I just don't want to. I want to hedge your bets.
Well, I'm glad you're fighting for it. Keep fighting for it. I'm one that joins you. Do you have any suggestions or advice for folks that want to get involved and do more?
Well, I just, right now I had to switch from Round River Conservation Studies in 2016 when the federal government delisted Yellowstone Grizzly. So I formed Save the Yellowstone Grizzly. That just happens to be what I'm doing right now, and and it's full-time work. And I had a board meeting yesterday in Livingston, Montana, And, we've finished a couple films in the past, and we're making another one now. I've got that freeway underpass as a project. I've hired lawyers to go after poachers and put some pressure on the government agencies too. And then we're working in the communities with stuff. No, I'm not good at that shit at all. I suck.
Well, at least
but
you hire the right people.
No.
Yeah.
No, that's what I gotta do. That is not my forte, but it needs to be done. And
right.
So that's what I'm doing.
Good for you. And it's called Save the Yellowstone Grizzly?
Yes, Save the Yellowstone Grizzly. And actually, we're looking for help, people that can be like tablers in Yellowstone National Park.
Okay.
And just kind of talk to people about bears and hand out brochures, stuff like that. It's posted all over. Save the Yellowstone Grizzly is a website. I don't maintain it because I'm a dunce.
Yeah.
When it comes to
I got a guy too. I'm not good at that either. I'm good at doing what we're doing right now. Talking on the mic.
Okay, that's
it. I hand the rest of it off. It's too technical for me. But we'll put a link to that in the show notes so people can find it. And
thanks.
And help you guys out. Yeah. So if you were to hang a huge banner at the front of one of these outdoor trade shows, what do you think you might say?
Well, we've got the banners all made up.
Yeah, all right,
and
cool.
I'm trying to remember, but we've got a pretty good road show. We do road shows all the time, and the banners are Save the Yellowstone Grizzly, and we've started the table, and I didn't even know what that meant 6 months ago, but I do now.
That's good.
Kind of.
Yeah. I'm sure you guys are at the trade show. I'm sure they have kind of a nonprofit row or one of these agency rows. So I'm sure there's a table there. I'll go look for them.
When is it going to be this year?
You know what? I don't know the exact date, but it's going to be in Denver sometime in the summer. I'll find those dates, but I don't have it on the top of my head.
Yeah, I'll find somebody to go down there.
Yeah,
actually,
cool.
Actually, my primary man lives in Denver, or outside up high.
Oh, perfect.
Denver.
Mm-hmm.
So he's there 24/7. We'll send him to the trade show. That'd be great.
He might be already going, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, outdoor retailer. And if he has questions, just connect him with me, and I'll connect him with the outdoor folks, and we'll get a table there for sure. Yeah. We're going to take a little break and give some love to our sponsor, Audible. Hey, do you love to read but don't always have the time to sit down with a good book? I'm the same, and sometimes I just feel like having someone else tell the story. Audible is like having a library in your phone. Whether I'm passing highway mile markers on the way to some adventure or racking up miles in the air, Audible helps the time fly as I'm enjoying a great book I discover or recommended by friends. Sign up for a free trial today at ricksays.com/audible. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from. Go to ricksays.com/audible and start your free trial today. Now, back to the show. So, I don't know if you made a gear purchase recently, but do you have a favorite piece of outdoor gear that you take with you all the time that's under $100 maybe?
Well, of course, I have my polar bear spear, which is on the cover of the book.
Oh, cool. I remember hearing about that in the book. Yeah, I was listening to that story. Those stories are great, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah. I started out going to Army surplus, and most of my filming of grizzly bears was done, starting in the spring in Yellowstone when there's 3 or 4 feet of snow. And it's also a good time. The bears are coming out, but they're in April. There's nobody in the backcountry. It's too late for skis and too early for boots, because you can only walk on the crest for about, the morning hours, and then you start breaking through. You can't go anywhere.
Yeah,
So, I started out really cheap, with just camouflage colored things. Korean wore those Mickey Mouse boots, those black things.
Yeah, I remember those things. Yeah, those big black things.
And so, I was not, high fashion walking down the highlight trail.
What was your navigation setup? You had a map and compass, did you, or no?
Oh yeah, I can find my way
with stars.
I'm really good at navigation, and I never even during a whiteout, don't really get lost as to directions. So, that's just not a problem. But I was fortunate to have really good maps in the early days, except for the Wind River Range. And the Wind River Range, you couldn't get modern maps until about 1970.
Wow.
And they had the Fremont quadrant, which was in 1906. And it had rivers running the wrong way and lakes that weren't there, and so you could imagine as you're going someplace wild and unexplored because there were no maps for the place.
Right.
Eventually, to do technical mountaineering and get around the glaciers, I had to find some aerial photos. They saved my butt.
How did you guys navigate when you were on that trip in the Arctic?
Well, the chapter that I did write that was up there was on I called a polar bear expedition.
Right.
But it was actually it was a beluga whale expedition, and the beluga whale guy was worried about polar bears, and indeed they were all up there. Well, the thing was up, back. Let's see. I don't remember when that took place, but early 90s, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was out there with Doug Tompkins and Rick Ridgway, another friend. And the beluga whales, there was the ice pack back then. There isn't now. All those big fjords are ice-free.
It's gone.
It's terrifying, actually. But back then, there was only one ice-free fjord, and it was on Somerset Island. And, there were 800 belugas and a whole bunch of narwhals in there. And I was just amazed at, the backs of belugas. Many of them, I don't know if I want to say most of them or not, but many of them had polar bear claw scars on their back. Yeah. And, but the thing was it was an island. So, it wasn't too hard. It was a big island.
You didn't need a lot of navigation skills because once you ran into water, you knew you were at the end of the island. Yeah, that's pretty good. So you write a lot of books. What are some of your favorite books to read?
Well, one good measure of the specific gravity of a book is I used to take these solo, 160-mile hikes across the Cabeza Prieta, which is basically Idaho to Yuma or out that direction. And I did 7 of them end to end and 1 from I-8 down to Mexico. I hardly ever saw a human being. Actually, Ed Abbey and Clark Abbey I ran into once out there, but you never saw any tracks or nothing out there. But, it'd take me 10 days and I would, I had to carry my own water, and not just that. You have to know where you can find wild water out there,
right?
In rock basins, and if you can't find water, you die.
Right.
So I'd do that. So I would carry one book with me and read around an ironwood fire at night, and So anyway, if you're going to carry a book 160 miles with a really heavy bag, you want it dense.
Right,
and,
right.
A really high specific gravity. I remember carrying the Odyssey, Moby Dick, and I carried a book. I carried one of Jim Harrison's books out there, and after Ed died, I had to read Hayduk Lib, so I took it out there.
So a lot of those classics, just because you could get
and classic. And lately, I've just read a book by Joy Williams, and just 3 or 4 nights ago, I cooked dinner for Richard Powers and Gretel Ehrlich and David and Betsy Quammen. Do you know Powers works? Overstory and yeah. Anyway. He's a hell of a writer, but so is Joy Williams. She writes dark books about the environment. but she perhaps is the greatest wordsmith in the English language that I've run across in a long time.
Okay. Well, we'll link to some of her books, too, in the show notes. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. As we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to say or ask of our listeners?
Just you've got to live your life as if these are the last of times, and we need all the help we can get. And don't believe the media when they tell you that nothing bad's going to happen until the turn of the century. I think we're going to know where we stand in a very few years.
Yeah,
and I mean with the. We've got fires everywhere. We're talking about our own fires here.
Yeah.
But, the Arctic is burning like crazy. And the Amazon is probably, those are criminal fires in the Amazon, and they're probably putting out more carbon dioxide than they're sequestering in the forest. And the Antarctic, the ice sheets are starting to break apart. And, the big ones, I guess the Larsen is breaking up now. But, if that Ross ice sheet were to break up next week, and it could, that's 12 or more, maybe 12 to 15 feet of sea rise in a week. And, it's here, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And just don't pretend that it isn't. And go ahead and bag your peaks or do whatever, you need to do to just get you out there and see the beauty of the world and see that it's really worth the fight.
That's beautiful.
And
I agree 100%. Well, you and I are pretty lucky that we got to be on this planet at an earlier time. Then I feel bad for my niece and nephew. I apologize to them all the time. It's like, I'm so sorry, but it's crazy. And how's the best way for people to find you? Is it your website? I can link to your website for sure in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not great at social media, but I do have a website. And Save the Yellowstone Grizzly has a website, and I'm posting stuff on that. And I don't know if I'll get around to writing another book, but I'm going to try.
Oh, good. It'd be great if you did. Yep, I've loved all your books. Yep, you're one of my eco heroes. So thank you for all you do, and keep it up.
Okay.
And I look forward to meeting you again
much.
one day. Let's make sure it's not so long before we meet. Next time I come up to Montana, I'll look you up.
Right. I'm just downstream from Yellowstone National Park.
Okay.
And occasionally I see 400 elk and a wolf out the front window.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
Look
awesome.
me up.
We'll have a scotch or something. All right. Thanks, Doug.
Okay.
Yeah,
bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. Be sure to visit our website, theoutdoorbizpodcast.com, where you'll find show notes with links to everything we talked about and more. Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you'll never miss an episode. And while you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or spread the word and tell a friend about the show. That would really help us out too. Be sure to tune in every week. And thanks again for listening to the Outdoor Biz Podcast with Rick Saez.